right, let's get started. So hello, my name is Pamela Smith, and I am the Senior Manager of Corporate Communications here at Clio. And we are here today to talk about PR, which is a really exciting topic on the law firm marketing track. And PR is something that Clio does a heck of a lot of, but it spans many, many different things for the company. And today we're here to talk about how that injects into your law firm practice and what are sort of the different ways that we can apply PR to legal. So I have a rock star panel, which I'm really excited about, and I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. First, I have Erin Levine in person.
Hi, Pamela. Hey, everyone. It feels a little bit like a family reunion because I recognize so many faces, and it's wonderful. My people.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, definitely. And then virtually, we have Gina Rubel, who literally wrote the book on PR for legal. But Gina, I'll get you to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gina Rubel. I'm coming to you from Pennsylvania. Are you getting an echo, or is it just me, Pamela?
You're good. We can hear you. Okay. We can hear you well.
Great. So I am a former litigator in Philadelphia, and I've worked on high-profile trials for almost 3 decades. So I'm giving away a little bit of my age. And I've written the book, Everyday Public Relations for Lawyers. I've been running Fiore Rubel Communications, which is a legal communications agency, for 20 years this year. And we work with clients all over the country and in several other countries as well. So I look forward to speaking with you today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Because I'm in the world of PR and social, I definitely want to make sure you're following at Go Clio and tagging us in ClioCon for all of the things that you're learning today or insights that you have. All 3 of us are active on social media, and we'll definitely respond and continue the conversation. So make sure you add that in. And then also, we're going to have some time for questions at the end. So we'll leave about 10 minutes. So if you do have some questions, we'll make sure that we're getting them from the audience. But I cannot wait to jump in. So we're going to start with a big question that I had for both Erin and Gina, and that is, they didn't teach this in law school. PR was probably not a course that either of you took. And so my first question for both of you is how you entered into PR space. What was that like? What was the first step forward into the world of PR? Because I imagine you both have very different experiences for that. So Erin, if you want to start us off.
Sure. I definitely did not take PR in law school. But yeah, it might be helpful for those of you who don't know me just to tell you a little bit about who I am. I've been a lawyer for 16 years. I'm a certified family law specialist in California. I am a private judge. And 10 years ago, I launched my law firm in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's Levine Family Law Group. And then a few years ago, I launched Hello Divorce, which is an online platform that makes divorce easier, kinder, a lot more affordable, with software and integrated services that meet the legal, financial, and emotional needs of our customers. So my entry to PR, and I thought it was kind of silly that I was asked to speak on this because I don't consider myself an expert in PR at all. But hopefully that will inspire many of you because it's not something that I ever learned or took a course on. It's really just kind of, taking it one step at a time. And I call PR the gift that keeps on giving because it truly, truly does. So the reason I became interested in PR is because at the time I was working on my startup and my law firm was really about me. Everybody knew me. Clients came to the firm because of me. But now I needed this opportunity to build the firm brand, not just the Erin brand. And I needed to let other people in my firm start to share the spotlight so that the firm could continue growing or at least not completely implode while I focused my time more on my startup. So that was the first reason why I was interested. The second was I launched Hello Divorce and I thought, hey, I have this software. I have this platform that makes divorce a lot easier. People are completing it in 1/3 the time. They're paying 1/10 the cost. So everybody should just come, right? And nobody knew it existed. And so I knew that marketing was a really important piece, and we all spend a lot of time either on our own or outsourcing paid advertising, maybe Yelp. We do a lot of SEO, and that I could track, and it was really important, but I needed a bigger platform. I needed to start to get my name out even farther than legal, but like into the minds of consumers. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, wonderful. And Gina, you have a very different story. Do you want to share that with us?
I do. So I went to undergraduate for corporate communications, which is a fancier way of saying public relations. It's how you communicate about corporations, and I loved it. I worked in the PR field prior to going to law school. I did not learn anything about marketing, business development, or public relations in law school, like many of you. And it wasn't until I was handling high-profile litigation that I really found this opportunity to marry my two loves, which were communications and the law. So that really was my impetus to what I do today, working with clients all over the globe, handling high-profile matters, crisis communications, media relations, and all the things I do today. But I came at it at a very different perspective than Erin.
Yeah, and actually that reminds me, when we talk about public relations or PR, I think most people think media, right? And because it's a huge component of PR, there's a huge media desk upstairs. But what are some of the other ways that you even define PR, or how do you, what do you think of when you think, okay, I have a public announcement or message or profile? What does that entail for both of you?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I look to, or the first thing that anyone looks to, right, is like that vanity play. Like, I want to get into Forbes or Entrepreneur, New York Times, and once you are able to do that, that is entirely exciting and amazing. But it's really not, for the most part, where our customers are, where our clients are. So what has been far more impactful for me and much better sort of time management is to focus on things like newsletters, podcasts that might be interesting to people that we serve, like anything that is public facing, even conferences in financial planning or marketing or something that has nothing to do with the law. Yeah, it's a huge area. There's so much you can do in there. And what about you, Gina? How do you sort of, especially with the work that you do, what does it involve outside of media relations?
Well, so interestingly enough, I always say PR does not equal a press release. And a lot of people come to us and say, I want a press release to shoot. And we're like, great, what does that mean? What are you trying to accomplish? PR is, and traditionally it was always in its own silo, where marketing or business development were in different silos. Public relations is a subset of marketing, but they all work in an integrated fashion. An example of that is speaking at a conference like we're doing today, taking the transcript and writing an article as a result and sharing it with your contacts in an e-newsletter or posting it as a blog or doing a follow-up podcast and sharing that out. So no one thing you do should only have one touch point. They should have 8 to 10 touch points. And so that's how PR is very different. Now you have earned media, which are those placements that Erin was speaking of. But then you also have created media. So you can create content as you will, or curate content. Your earned media is that placement in Forbes, that placement in your local newspaper, your local TV station. Whereas these other things are things that you could take advantage of to become a thought leader. And isn't that what PR is all about? It's about being that thought leader.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, so I really want to get to the meat of it right at the beginning, because I think many questions will follow. But we have an audience here of legal professionals, and I would love to distill 2 reasons why you do this, because most law firms don't have a PR person in the center, especially if they're smaller or solo. So I wanted to challenge both of our panelists with just 2 reasons, because there are a million in my head. But what are sort of 2 strong reasons why you would do this work and dedicate space in your brain to think about PR and maybe execute on a strategy for your firm or for yourself? So, Erin, I'm going to start with you. Are there sort of 2 reasons?
Is tough. 2 is tough. Are we allowed to have subparts?
Sure. Go for it.
No, I mean, really, it's for us, it's really about brand awareness and brand awareness. But brand awareness in terms of credibility and getting the word out, not just to potential customers, but potential lawyers and financial professionals that could become part of our team at some point. And then the second is which I think a lot of you will relate to, is the thought leader piece, the establishing yourself as an authority on a subject. We're all subject matter experts here, and we think because we're surrounded by so many that there are so many, but there aren't. There really aren't, if you think about it. And so that knowledge that you have is really interesting and unique, and you have lots of opportunity to share it, which I'm sure we'll talk about different ways to get that message out.
For sure. For sure. Gina, do you have thoughts on that? Sort of the 2 best reasons why you do this?
Well, I agree with Erin. Those are the top 2. You also need to be thinking about what's in it for the audience and why it matters. And the reason why I tie that in is we have our websites that are very self-serving, all about, I did this, I went to this school. But when you're identifying what you do for an audience and they're seeing it through the public eye or through thought leadership, those things that not just that credibility, but they validate what you bring to the table, no matter what kind of law you practice. So when somebody searches for you, and it also benefits search engine optimization, when they search for you, they're searching based on their needs. They don't really care about whether or not you practice in local, regional, and state and federal courts and the Supreme Court. They want to know, can you solve my problems? Law is a needs-based space, whereas consumer, for example, at consumer products is wants-based. You want to buy a new pair of pants or a new suit. You don't necessarily need one. In law, people need your services when they need them. So it really helps to validate what you do.
For sure. For sure. Can we jump into a question that, okay, so it's near and dear to my heart. Cleo was in the New York Times this year. If anyone missed it, come find me. I'll share the article.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Big moment for us. But when we think about, okay, I want to do PR, I want to get out there, I want to build my profile, build credibility, all of the things that you're talking about. Am I calling the New York Times? Am I trying to get in some of those really amazing, impactful media hubs that we all know by name? Or is there a different strategy? So I'd love to talk about that a little bit. I'd love to hear from you both about your strategies when you do have, I will say, stories, not news, because that's an important thing to talk about as well. But sort of what's your approach to going to media? And then what's your approach to going to media? And then what kind of stories are you bringing forward, or what sort of topics do you deem media worthy once you decide to put this forward? 3-part question.
Erin, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Go for it, Gina.
So as a legal marketing agency, we do more of storytelling for our clients as opposed to ourselves. And the first thing that the audience needs to ask when they're thinking of, I want to be telling this story is who it matters to, who is the audience. So until you know that, you really can't make a decision as to the best outlet for that story. So for example, we had a client who worked on a celebrity criminal case. We got that client on to Good Morning America with Gloria Allred because it made sense. It was a national, international story. It needed a national platform. Whereas if you're practicing family law and you're very county-based or regional-based, that's probably not your best outlet, nor the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. You want to be looking at your local trades, your local publications. And if you're legal tech, you should be looking for Bob Ambrogi somewhere at the conference and introducing yourself.
Very good point. Bob's upstairs. Yeah. And what about you, Erin? What do you think about when you bring stories forward, and to whom?
Yeah, I think there's so press can be really time consuming. I'm assuming that most of you in this room are doing it on your own and don't have a PR agency that you're working with. Same here. So I think of it like this. I do 2 to 3 times a year, I pitch a story, because those are the hardest ones to get placed. To do a story about you or a story about your company, it's without having these relationships built with journalists, it's going to be really tricky. And I know that. So what I do for those, so I wait until I have news, maybe a new product update, maybe something about our customers, something that's special. And before I go and announce it, I think of press strategy. I always start there. And then I really spend a lot of time researching journalists, which journalists might be most interested in the story, what types of articles have they written that have resonated with me or might be connected somehow to the story that I'm talking about. Because if you just send out pitches to 100 different journalists, you're not going to hear from any of them. Many of them, at least what I've found, are like half my age or, very young. They are very busy. At least they feel underpaid. I don't know if that's the case or not, but they feel that way. And they're getting, thousands of emails every week or every month. And so it has to be something that really captivates and interests them. So that's sort of like the larger strategy. But those stories, you don't need one of those every quarter or every year to keep building your brand. Instead, what I often focus on more is easier ways to get quoted in articles or journals or magazines. And the 2 places that I source those opportunities are Help a Reporter Out, HARO. If you sign up for them, they will send you emails however often you want to receive them. I receive them daily. Just skim them to see if there's anything in my industry that I could speak to. Or Quoted, which is spelled QWOTED. Both are really great ways to not have to worry about pitching. Instead, the journalists come to your email box. They tell you exactly what they need information on. And if that is within your subject expertise, you respond. And I would say 4 times out of 5 we're quoted once we do that.
Yeah.
And I want to throw something in there, if I may, Erin. It's really important if you use those platforms, you need to respond right away.
Yeah.
Don't wait 2 days, write out your key messages, think about it. You really have to do it quickly. And don't do it when you're on trial.
Don't what?
You have to be don't do it when you're on trial. You need to be able to be responsive when they reach out to you, not 3 days later.
Yeah, that's hot tip. Definitely respond quickly. I've also had a virtual assistant or a paralegal scan them like once every couple days to see. For me, I'm into family law, so they'd look for divorce, they'd look up for breakup advice, they'll look for relationships. If there's a celebrity divorce, and we can do what is often called newsjacking, like sort of speak to some big event in your industry happening on the media, then and they find it, then they'll just like send it my way, and then it's a quick response.
Yeah, actually, you both bring up a really good point. The news cycle is 24 hours. So something that is resonating right now isn't necessarily resonating 2 days from now. And I think a lot of journalists are on that rhythm. And so we really need to be sharp when we're putting something in front of them for the best outcome. So Erin, you're looking at something every 2 to 3 times a year, you said?
At pitching like a story about about our company, about a particular set of consumers, or about me or somebody on my founding team.
Yeah. And Gina, I'm curious, the clients you work with, what do you think is a good cadence to go out to media or to put something out? What's sort of a good touch point publicly for legal professionals? I know everyone's a little different, but on average, what are your thoughts around that?
We don't have an actual cadence. I think it's very dependent on whether or not you're doing it for yourself as a solo or small firm, so we work with a lot of am law firms. So we may be reaching out daily, but it's in different practice groups, different industries, different countries, different areas. What I think is most important is that you develop relationships with reporters that cover what you talk about, that reach your target audience, and you develop them before you want to speak to them. In other words, reach out, introduce yourself on LinkedIn or Twitter. Take the time. And if you're not on LinkedIn, you should be.
I was just going to say,
it's the first place they
Let's
go.
talk about the power of LinkedIn while you're here.
Yeah. You need to be on LinkedIn. You need to be following those reporters, not to mention your referral sources. Depending on your industry, depends on whether or not you follow clients or witnesses or things, expert witnesses or things like that. But the other thing is 27% of the verified Twitter users are members of the media. They're journalists. They're looking at what you're saying on Twitter. They're looking at who you know, what you share on LinkedIn. And that's not just me talking. I've interviewed many, many reporters over the years, including on our podcast, and they say the same thing. They are looking to validate you before follow up. But reach out to them and say, I'd love to talk to you. Are you open for an informational discussion?
I would agree. I would also say we're busy. And if reaching out seems like really hard and frustrating, you don't have the time for it. I can't tell you how many times just posting on Twitter or posting on LinkedIn, I've thought, oh, this is just going into the abyss. Nobody cares. It's not going anywhere. But in reality, once I became consistent with it, which I haven't been lately, but I was, journalists started to reach out to me as well. So if there's a particular hashtag you can use, if it's, access to justice or justice tech or personal injury or whatever it might be, and you can speak on it regularly, that could be really helpful as well.
Well, and I want to share something. If you're writing blogs, let's say you write a blog on something that's happening in the news right now, and it's well optimized. We've had clients be called from members of the media because they read a blog and wanted to do a follow-up story. So, and they've shared it on Twitter, they've shared it on LinkedIn, and the media reaches directly out to them. So remember the power of all these tools working together, as we started talking about earlier.
Definitely. And actually, if we think about that inbound, we've been talking a lot about pushing out, getting your message out there. different ways to approach media or approach the public. There's also on the flip side some risks to PR, and you definitely want to be aware of them because whatever goes out there is public on record. Those are very permanent things and might require a whole other PR strategy if not the way you want. So can we dive into risks for a moment, not to scare anyone in the room, but just to be open and honest about some of the things that you're thinking about, because it's not easily backtracked if you put something out there that you're not so keen to do. So Erin, do you have a few, or should we go right to Gina?
I mean, Gina's going to be great at this because she's like training and working with lawyers regularly. I would say what I have learned the hard way is you always, like, of course, there's the obvious ones, right? Like attorney-client privilege, be careful with that. But like legal advice versus legal information, a lot of times you might be interviewed by a journalist, or it might be live or even on a podcast, and they want to know specifically about what happens if. And you can share as much legal information as you want, but the moment that you start applying the law to a particular set of facts or a specific person, then you're really bordering on unauthorized practice of law. And we know how much state bars love to come down on us when it comes to unauthorized practice of law. So that is definitely one. The second is, I mean, you shouldn't be spending a lot of time with like hostile reporters. Most of your PR efforts and the most, impact that you're going to see is being reaching out to journalists, establishing those relationships, and then them coming back to you when they need a quote on a subject that you're an expert in. But at some point, there might be hostile journalists. And I learned the hard way. Recently, California passed a law that makes it so the California State Bar can't consider or continue to consider expanding access to justice initiatives. I was angry. The Daily Journal reached out to me. I should have known that they would be hostile to my position. And my quote was misquoted and mischaracterized. And there are certainly things I could have done to prevent that. And what upset me the most is that it wasn't just me or my company on the line as a board member of the Justice Technology Association, like it was also representing them. And so what I've been doing since then is, number one, asking if I could approve the quote in writing before it goes, before it's published. On a rare occasion, they might actually let you see the article and approve it. That's not always. Usually the best I can do is a quote. And then to like know your journalist, understand them. And if it seems like something you're going to need to do a lot of research on, or you're going to need some training on, then like reach out to somebody who really gets it, because it can go bad pretty fast.
Yeah, those are good warnings.
It wasn't horrible, but it just like, it wasn't great.
Yeah. But it happens, right? Like we are human beings and we're not going to be perfect out there. But it is important to have some guardrails on where to go, where not to go. So Gina, I'm dying to hear from you. What are your guardrails?
Oh, I have a lot of them, but I think attorneys need to understand how the media plays out in all ways. And when I talk about media, I'm not just talking about reporters, I'm talking about social media. So for example, telling your clients what not to do and what not to say. I've seen so many cases go awry because there was a confidential settlement and the client starts bragging on Facebook or speaks to the media when they shouldn't have. So that's one thing, making sure your clients really understand as well as you. Another risk is, which is also a don't ever say no comment. It puts you in a very bad light. It looks like, you're hiding. I think about the commercials or the TV shows where the lawyer runs up the courtroom steps with a briefcase in front of their face. You never want to say no comment. There are many better alternatives.
What
client confidentiality? And I'm going to mention.
Okay, you're going to get into that. Okay.
Client confidentiality. So important to know what you can and cannot say, and always, if you're talking about particular matters, getting client approval. So many lawyers talk about things in the abstract, but they're not abstract enough. And clients get pretty upset about that. And if you're in a solo and small firm environment, it's really hard to hide from that. So those are things to think about. Alternatives to no comment. It could just be, while the matter is in litigation, we are going to try the case in the court of law. They can't say you said no comment. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes you want to say something, you need to get out in front of the matter, and that's different. Another risk, and I love this, I love sharing this, especially if those of you who do work. It's what we call the power of pause. A lot of reporters will pause and wait for you to say more. And think about the cross-examination in the courtroom. We do the same thing. We remain quiet because we don't like silence. And then they say exactly what their lawyer didn't want them to say. The same thing happens in media interviews. So you need to be smart, be prepared. And I'd like to say be quiet when you should be quiet.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. I have a couple of ground rules with PR myself. I think I've shared them with both of you. I don't put out news on Fridays. It's garbage day in media. Everyone's heading out for the weekend. And I like to sustain the news all week, especially if it's good news. No comment, not a place we go. There's a lot of power in I don't know. Like maybe you don't have the answer to something that a journalist has asked you about. That's okay. Like, I don't know right now, but I'll get back to you. I think there's a lot of power in that. We don't have to know the answer to every single thing that's being asked of us. And again, it's a 24-hour news cycle. It's got to move fast. So if a journalist asks you for something at 10 a.m., by 5 p.m., I have closed that request. It doesn't last longer than a day in my books. We move as quick as possible to stay on that news cycle. So yeah, but a lot of things to think about. But let's shift a little bit. Let's go into growth. I would love to talk about how PR can help grow your law firm, which is what our session is about today. And I would also love to fold in impact. Like, how do you even measure that this is having an impact on your firm? How do you know this is working? So do you want to start us off, Erin?
Sure. I hope to get the opportunity to share our rules too.
Do you have rules? Oh my gosh. Okay, we need to hear those too.
Okay.
Go for those first.
Okay, I have my phone with my notes because, I forget. But trying to give as practical tips as possible. So only pitch, 2 to 3 to 4 times a year on big stories. If I'm able to grab a journalist's attention and they will talk to me, then I always do 2 things. One is I keep in mind 3 points that I want to get out, and I make sure to say it at the start, in the middle, and before the interview is over. And then I also ask the journalists ahead of time for bullet points or questions so that I have a better sense of like what angle he or she might be interested in. I also, to avoid getting distracted or overwhelmed, I'm always clear about what my specific goal is when contacting a journalist or media platform. So if it's like a legal publication, I want to be known as an expert in a particular area of law. And so I want to show my expertise. If it's women's health, I'm doing it and I'm reaching out to them. It's more about brand awareness and selling a story that is not so focused on the nuance, like that one case that went awry, and more about what 95% of people are going to experience in divorce or in some family law issue and how to help them through it. So I think it's really important to be careful and think through who your audience is, not just who the journalist is. Those
are very good points. Thank you for sharing those. Okay, so we have a bit of a primer on PR. We know we should go out with things. We have a good cadence. We know where not to, or what to be aware of. How does it fold into your law firm growth? How do you know it's working once you start doing this work? So really like the impact of this work on your firm. How are you measuring that specifically?
It's hard to measure impact with PR, with top of funnel stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like with your paid marketing, you can see exactly what's happening. Sometimes with PR, you can do, for example, a tracking link on a podcast, send them to your website / something else. But it's often pretty hard, and it takes a while. So one thing that you can absolutely do is ask your clients, right? Maybe it's that you're asking them directly, maybe when they're filling out their intake form or when they're talking to an intake staff, you're asking them where they heard about you. Oftentimes people will say they saw us with like a Google ad or a Google search, but then like they did more research because legal is big. People are stressed out. They have big problems to solve. And so they're going to keep looking and make sure that they're finding the right person. And then they'll say, oh, and then we saw you or your company in, TechCrunch or Vice or wherever it might be.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Can I stop you right there for a moment? Do you think PR is stronger as an intake tool or as a third-party validator? Like they've seen you on Google, they've seen reviews, and then you're leveraging the brand of the media house that's covered you. Well, she was in Vice. That's a pretty big deal. Like,
it is really helpful to have those logos from, Today's Show or TechCrunch or whatever it might be on your website. And remember, it could just be that it wasn't a total story on you, but it was like a quote that you gave about law practice management, right? You still get to use that logo. So that's super helpful. But like overall, where we see the most impact for us is like, validation.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about you, Gina?
So Pamela, I'm going to ask you to read the room for me. I'm going to ask the audience.
It's hard with this.
How many? Yeah, just if you can get a sense of how many of you actually use a CRM system.
Can we have a raise of hands?
Lots.
Yeah, we've got a good amount. I'd say 60 to 70% of the room.
Wow, that is fantastic. 5 years ago, it might have been 10%. So kudos to all of you. I think that's really important. PR is not as not measurable as we may think. And what I'm not going to do is advocate for these big, expensive tools for smaller firms because they are expensive. We use a lot of tools where we do actually measure impact and business development. However, for your size firms in attendance, there's a couple of things you can do. One, look at your Google Analytics. Look at where the traffic is coming from. Look at conversion rates. If your website is tied to your CRM, like I think you have a platform, right? Clio Grow.
Mm-hmm.
Clio Grow. And so if they're tied together, they can speak to each other. So you can see this newsletter with this content. Our newsletters usually talk about our PR coverage. So they'll go to the PR coverage and then come back. We can see that through our CRM. We use HubSpot because we're not a law firm. There's so many tools you can use. So one is your Google Analytics. Another is how do you do your intake? So I can't tell you how many firms don't ask the question. They're on their website or through whomever is answering the phone. How did you hear about us? It's as simple as that. And I mentioned earlier, legal is needs-based, so you have to be top of mind. More times than not, I will see, I'm in a number of Facebook groups, and a lot of the local ones where I live. Somebody will say, I'm looking for a divorce attorney, or my friend is looking for a divorce attorney, where should I go? Or this incident happened to me, does anybody know a workers' comp lawyer? If you're not front of mind for people, they don't remember you. So for everyone in consumer-based industries, if you're not on Facebook, you should be. But you need to be careful in that space. It should be your law firm, not you. So, but all of these things are measurable. I can post an article on LinkedIn, and I can tell you how many people interacted with it, who went to our website as a result. And almost always I will get one call that says, hey, I didn't know you did that. We have this need. So put the systems in place, take the time to do that. You can actually measure your return on investment.
Yeah, I think, first of all, those are great tips. When you brought up social media, it reminded me about, pitching stories. And I think we as lawyers, mostly lawyers, tend to think that we need to pitch like the most complex story out there. And I often do that. I used to do that all the time about some really complex law or change or, trial. But what I find gets picked up most is when I do a poll on social media. And if I get even 100 or 200 people to respond about how they feel in a particular moment, pitch that to a journalist, that often gets picked up. So super complex rules around child custody, not so interesting. Whether or not your dog will end up with you or your ex during a split, very interesting. So look at the headlines, what you're seeing out there. And I know it's hard because we want to talk about things that are really important to us in our community, but sometimes it's just much easier to do something that, we hold the information to that impacts something that's important to people in the moment.
Erin, for somebody who says she's not a PR pro, you're pretty darn good at this.
Definitely. There's a reason you're up here. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And whenever we think about what a journalist or a podcaster, or anyone who has a media platform, what they're interested in, it's again that other step. It's not necessarily what the journalist is into, but what their audience is into. So if we're entering in on something very complex, will not resonate with the general public or whatever level of understanding their audience has. And as we get bigger in media houses, that public audience becomes more and more and more general. So that's a really good point that you've touched on there. If you want to get specific, if you want to get technical, those are the legal trades. Yeah. Those are the much more, that's that audience.
Bloomberg, Insider, your local bar association's newsletter, California, your state bar, like that's where you get nuanced.
Yeah.
And everybody else really doesn't care much about that at all.
They want to know where the dog goes.
They want to know where the dog goes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So before everyone leaves today, I would love for sort of a first step. I'm going to give this a go. What is one tiny incremental thing I can do walking out of this room and try this out? Because whether you're new to PR or not, like it's always nice to have fresh ideas of, how PR can live with you in the work that you do every day. So I'm wondering, if I hadn't done this before, never thought about talking to a journalist or putting something out there that might be my own thought leadership or content, what would be like the first thing you would do starting from scratch to start doing this?
I'd update my social profiles. I decide which ones you want to focus on. You don't have to do them all. And I'd sign up for something like a HARO so that, number one, you start getting quoted in articles, and that's exciting and helpful. But number two, once you've spoken to one of these journalists, even if it's just by email or text, now you have a relationship with them, and they hop around a lot. So what one quote was in, Brit & Co. can turn into an article in Fortune down the road when that journalist gets picked up there.
And Gina?
And I'm going to agree with the social profiles, but I'm going to say it a little differently. It's really important to update your LinkedIn profile, and it shouldn't read as your resume. The profile section should talk about what's in it for the client. What benefits do you bring? What sets you apart from others? And not I do this, but this is how I help our clients, and it should be in the first person. That's number one. Number two, Erin, I would say most people should do this before signing up for those tools, is get media trained. Whether or not you're doing it through a media trainer or doing it through some online tutorials or reading a book, you really have to be comfortable. And most lawyers think they're great at talking to the media. I can tell you, as a third generation attorney and one who thought the same way, I am so glad there was no such thing as social media when I had my first television interview.
Where could we get media training? Because I've taken a bazillion classes and most of them weren't very helpful at all. So it would be great if you had a recommendation. That's a tough one. I don't want to come off as self-serving. It's something we do. I'm not here to sell. I'm here to give counsel. There are the platform, Gina.
I know, but that's not, I always tell people don't sell when you're speaking, so I'm not going to do that. There are a lot of media trainers out there. I would look for one that understands the idiosyncrasies of being a lawyer and the ethics rules. That to me is very important. And it should be to you as well. And they should be someone who, and today you can do it online. You don't have to be in person, because we can videotape you online, give you we always do scenario training. So I might sit there and grill you on questions, Erin, and have you answering me as if we're in an actual interview. And then I would give you feedback, like, don't say, I think. A lot of attorneys will say, I think, because we're so used to being careful. You sound like you're not confident. So there's a lot of things we do, but there's a lot of great media trainers all over the country.
Great. Yeah, that's very good advice. Doing it in a low stakes environment before the actual interview. And I know a lot of people do tabletops too. I've got this great opportunity. I don't want to mess it up. I'm going to call someone like Gina to run this with me, or even if it's a colleague or whatever it is. But getting your answers out in a low stakes environment is a great way to rock the media interview when it happens.
And if you
and there's always a lawyer who's really media trained in your bar association who you can go to and say, hey, I have this high stakes media interview. Can I talk to you quickly?
Erin, were you going to say something?
That's another one.
If you've survived moot court and litigating or talking to clients in really high stress situations, you can do this. It's not nearly as hard as we make it out to be.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Bringing it back down. Okay, I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. So I'm going to do my best to put on the visor and see if anyone has any questions for either Erin or Gina. And if not, we have a couple more that we could go through, but I would love to hear from some people in the audience. Hi, yes, go ahead. Yeah, so the question is being approached on something fast and difficult. So specifically in this situation, TMZ approaching, asking for court docs, that's a very...
It's wild. I mean, I spent a lot of time in LA and Santa Barbara, and I would see these people literally like waiting at the courthouse to pull files and petitions that could be interesting around celebrities. So the fact that they wanted you to pull it, something's up there. That's interesting.
But it is a lot of pressure when you receive that. You're like, oh my God, it's TMZ. This is great. And we know TMZ as a media platform is huge. And and you have to move fast. You're probably given a 10-minute window to make a decision if you're going to respond to them or not. So I'm going to throw this one to Gina. Gina, what do you think? Someone were to call you with this.
My rule of thumb is ask them their deadline, get a business card or a cell phone and an email address, and pause. Do not do something right then and there so that you have those few minutes to think. Otherwise you're going to get yourself into trouble. If they don't know how to get a public petition, frankly, if it's TMZ, I might say, what's your deadline? What's your email address? I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
That it's not something I would quickly respond to unless you're very well prepared.
Yeah. See if they'll put the question in writing or don't respond at all. Like it's really about your personal brand. Like for you, that might be a really great thing, especially if you're attracting and want to attract as clients, high profile, celebrity or wealthy folks. Like for me, and this might be a silly choice, but I kind of stay away from a lot of those, TV shows and magazines. One of the reasons is my biggest competitor in the space, that is her thing. That is her shtick, right? Is like celebrity gossip. And so I'll let her have that. And for my own personal brand, I rather be seen more as like a legal expert or legal fintech, that kind of sort of place. So it doesn't mean I don't participate. I've done interviews and articles on Entertainment Tonight. I'm just very careful I prefer to give information and help to the masses versus talk about somebody in particular and what they're struggling with in that moment. But like no judgment. If that works for your brand, go for it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say no. It's always okay to say no.
There will be other opportunities if you're that, like, if they know that you exist, then like that's big.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have another question? Yes, over here. Great. I'm going to repeat the question just in case anyone hasn't heard it, but how do you prepare for intake of media requests? How do you put something out there, maybe a release, or maybe you're going out with a story like Erin does a couple times a year. How do you prepare for all of those inbound requests to come in? What's your strategy for being ready to take it on? Erin, do you want to start us off, or Gina?
Well, I was going to say on our end, the media is so busy today in comparison to 20 years ago that you're lucky if 3 people respond when you put something out. So if it's a big story, so we've worked on some both national and international high profile stories, literally where we had then Mike Lauer calling the office. We do intake. Who is it? What are they looking for? What is their deadline? And we prioritize. So there's a lot of media strategy that goes into who you're going to talk to and when. And that's part of the planning process. Also having your key messages ready in advance. I tell people before they go to trial, write their key messages depending on 3 ways that the outcomes might look. Best case scenario, worst case scenario, and something in the middle. And have that ready. So those are just some things. Most of the time, you're not going to have 50 reporters calling you. That does happen. And when it happens, you need a team. And the best advice I could give you is to make sure whoever answers your phone is given very specific instructions on what they can and cannot say and the information they need to get. I've seen receptionists say, we have no comment, and then that's the headline the next day.
Yeah, I haven't received a ton of requests by phone, but I think that's really important. We tend to get requests by email, and so we have, like, if it's a press release or for giving our email address out, then we have a dedicated email address for that. And we have a VA or one of our life cycle managers who's like scanning it. And if it looks like it could be interesting or timely, oftentimes I'll have them take the extra step of like, who is this journalist and is this publication like for real, legit. I do that. But I mean, if those are the types of cases you're taking where there's this expectation that you might get that amount of volume, then that is a really good, important time to consider hiring, some PR help. And otherwise, yeah, I mean, when I decide I'm going to pitch and I'm really going to lean into these stories, there's one coming out really soon in a tech publication about the intersection of law and how the way we are now practicing law is changing human behavior. And I knew that was going to take a lot of energy and time. So I specifically said to myself, when I'm going to pitch these stories, then it's got to be a time where I have several weeks where it's not as crazy. There's no big product launch or big trial or something like that.
And, I want to share, and this isn't to say call us, it's to say talk to a PR team. If it's really high profile, they're also the scapegoat. So we will oftentimes protect our clients from the media and make sure that it's handled in a very orchestrated manner. So there are things to think about, especially if it's high profile.
Okay, so we have maybe time for one more question. We're about 3 minutes left. I can see a gentleman here in the front. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it really comes down to budget for me. So early on, I felt like I needed some media training, but I couldn't, pay for coaching. And so I did a lot of research and I ended up going, the one I liked was, I think her name, I can follow up after this, Ashley Crouch. I think it was Appleseed Communications. I just really liked her approach and the placements that she got consumers in, that she got subject matter experts into were really great. And she had this online course with modules that I thought were really practical. Like, here are the journalists you need to contact. Here's how you pitch. Here's what you don't do. So I really liked that. Then before we raised our first round of funding at Hello Divorce, so for that was big news. I did hire a PR agency. I told them that which I'm happy to share with anyone. I told them that I would be using them for a few months, and we would try it and see how it works. So I was really upfront with them. We did it 90 days. They were fabulous, but really it still took a lot of my time. Ultimately, they weren't crafting the stories that I wanted to tell. And so I was spending a lot of money, and not really getting the type of press I wanted. So that's like when I decided to pull back and just focus on a few stories a year.
And Gina, I don't know if you heard the question, but the question was, you have comms, you have PR, you have coaching, branding. There's a whole slew of help, external help or internal that you can hire. Where do you start? Which ones do you go to?
For small firms, you need to go to a firm that does an integrated approach. You can't hire 7 different firms. That doesn't make sense. So, and you need to start with a plan. It's like building a house. You need a blueprint. And then, not every type of firm should be doing everything. So if you do corporate law, billboards, for example, are not something you should be doing. So it's taking a strategic planned approach. If I may, we were able to get a discount code for my book from Attorney at Work, which is Everyday PR for Lawyers. It does have the first 2 chapters are how to define that plan. That could be very helpful for some of you to figure out, where do I start and how do I get there?
Yes, and that will be available in the Clio Cloud conference app. So you can all access that discount code today.
Yeah, I also recommend Donald Miller's Building a Story brand. It's really amazing around brands, but I got so many ideas for press after reading that book, just like how to build a story that might be interesting to reporters.
That's a great idea. I'm going to ask you to share that on social so we can all click and get it.
Sure.
We are at time. I want to say thank you. Thank you for putting this perspective and knowledge of this space. It's so niche, PR, in legal. It's so specific, but it's really wonderful to see everyone be able to share in what we're learning, because it is always evolving and changing. So thank you, Erin. Thank you, Gina, for joining us remotely as well. And like I said, follow, share, tag. It's an active group here, so we're happy to answer more questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And feel free to connect with me outside the hall after this.
Okay.
And feel free to connect with me on social. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.